Yes, sir. Good morning.
Ayan, good morning, ma'am.
Yes, sir. I realize about it that you can be flexible when in terms of sharing your skills, knowledge, or ideas.
Okay, we could be flexible in sharing your knowledge or ideas. And syempre, um, if you are teaching and if you will be facing your students, it does not also it does not necessarily follow that you will always be a facilitator. It depends on the nature of the learners, it depends on the nature of the content you will be delivering, and it depends on the condition. Diba? Maaari kasi there are instances in which the topic is meant for a training. There are instances that the topic is appropriate for a presentation, or there are instances in which you could utilize training and presentation at the same time, or there are also instances in which you can use facilitation. Okay, so I hope I'm making sense so far. Okay, so let's remember that a facilitator is better than both a trainer and a resource person. Bakit better si facilitator doon sa trainer at resource person? Kasi in doing so, we are combining training and presentation at the same time. That's why being a facilitator is far more effective than being a trainer or a resource person. So if I were you and if I will be uh, a teacher someday, or if I am a practicing teacher, I should have I should have uh, allow myself to develop my facilitation skills. And syempre, as a facilitator, you have to walk the talk. Ano ba pag sinabi nating walk the talk? Anyone? When we say walk the talk, what does it mean?
Just like, sir, practice what you preach.
Yes, practice what you preach or do what you are saying. And as a facilitator, you cannot effectively communicate what you wanted to communicate if you are not actually practicing it. You cannot say that you want to communicate effectively to your students if you are not. Yes, you cannot do it if you're not practicing it. And syempre, sabi natin, put words into actions. That's what is meant by walk the talk. And as a facilitator, you have to practice that. And syempre, if you are asking of the thoughts and feelings of your students, if you are asking them to share their insights, or if you are asking of what they feel at the moment, syempre, ang facilitator dapat may puso. At yan ang kailangang taglayin ng lahat ng guro. The facilitator cares. If you think that your participants are not listening, find a way to make them attentively listen to your talk. If you think that the respondents or the audiences or your students or the participants are having a hard time listening to you, devise ways on how you could address those issues. Or if the learners are finding the content hard, make a way to make the hard content easier for them. Kasi hindi maganda facilitation na stiff. As a facilitator, you have to have heart for learning. You have to have care. Okay? Next one. Facilitator guides rather than controls learning. Kaya nga sabi natin, kapag facilitation, we stimulate discussion by asking the feelings, the thoughts of your students, di ba? So, syempre, if you are on that note, then definitely, ang ginagawa ng facilitator ay nagda-guide rather than controlling learning. Tatandaan natin, we guide rather than we control learning. If the students want to learn at their own pace, so be it. But you have to guide them. No? Kaya nga sabi natin, gone are the days that the teacher controls learning. It's more of student-centered. Okay? And syempre, kung ikaw ay facilitator, para kang isang choir conductor, para kang isang orchestra conductor. Bakit? Nasa sa iyo ang susi kung paano mo maiitono at mapapaganda ang kondisyon ng iyong session, ng iyong pagtuturo. So, ibig sabihin, if you failed to plan effectively of your session, then definitely hindi maganda ang kakalabasan. Just like conducting an orchestra or conducting a choir, for it to sound better or sound nice, you have to train yourself. You have to condition every part of your session, every audiences. Okay? You get my point?
Yes, sir.
The next one. What must then the what must then be the facilitator's facilitation skills? Given the fact that those are the things that we have to consider. Sa tingin niyo po, mga ma'am and sir, the next question would be, ano dapat ang taglayin natin bilang isang facilitator? Anong mga skills ang dapat nating iniisip? Given the fact that we have to walk the talk, we don't have to control learning, but we guide them or facilitate, ano po ang dapat nating taglayin bilang facilitator? Any wild guess?
Yes,
Ano,
sir.
preparation, sir.
Yup.
Preparation, you have to be prepared. Yes, ma'am Nai.
You must be effective and credible speaker, sir.
You have to be effective and credible speaker. And syempre, how can we ensure that we are effective and credible speaker? Definitely, you have to master the content that you will be delivering, right? Kasi kung hindi mo inaral or hindi mo kabisado or hindi mo gamay, sa Batangas ang tawag namin gamay, ang iyong sinasabi, then definitely mahahalata iyan ng iyong audience. Malalaman ng audience mo that you are not confident with the content you are communicating or with the content that you are saying. Ba? Sabi ni Sir Vernie, you have to be a good communicator. Sabi ni Miss Aini, you have to be an active listener. And that's actually the quality of an effective facilitator. You have to have listening skills. Dapat marunong kang makinig. At ang pakikinig, hindi lamang tainga ang ginagamit sa pakikinig, kundi ang puso at isipan. Kasi kung bukas ang tenga mo sa pakikinig, pero hindi naman bukas ang isipan at puso mo, tatanggapin yung naririnig ng tenga mo, then it would be forfeited or it will be taken for granted. Listening not only to the words, but understand the meaning of the words and the implication of the words stated by your audiences will make you an effective facilitator. Ramdamin mo ang pulso ng iyong audience. Allow them to speak up and listen to what they are saying. Okay? Do I make sense po? Still following?
Yes
Okay.
po.
Now, what?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much for your responses. Now, the next question is, what is meant to be a good listener? What is a listening skill? Or what are the things that are included in listening skills? Okay, so to listen means understand the meaning of what has been said. Okay, so you have to have a transcendental mind. Kasi minsan, mayroong mga estudyante or may mga audiences na they are actually saying concepts or ideas which are not too literal. So hindi dapat natin tratuhin ang isang bagay na laging literal kasi there are instances that there are meanings behind the context of the phrases or ideas shared by your audiences. And then, syempre, kahit pa positive or negative, ang ibinigay na ang isinare na idea ng iyong listener or ng iyong audience, dapat ikaw ay magre-respond positively. You have to acknowledge all the insights shared by your audiences. You have to also clarify and check the understanding of what was heard and react to ideas, not to the person. Okay? So dapat hindi tayo gumagamit ng tinatawag nating ad hominem. Ibig sabihin, ang iyong inaatake ay yung taong nagtanong, hindi yung idea ang kanyang sinabi. If you are a good listener, you listen to the idea, not to the person. You get my point? Kasi minsan, if you are not comfortable with that person, kahit anong sabihin niya, hindi mo pinapakinggan or hindi mo pinapaniwalaan. Ang atin pong dapat taglayin ay hindi yung kung sino yung tao, kundi yung idea na sinasabi niya. Kasi kahit ang taong ito ay kilala sa pagiging ganyan, yet the idea that he or she is portraying are good, then you have to give focus on the idea, not on the person. Sabi ni Sir Gerald, as a facilitator, you need also to listen dahil hindi po naman lahat ng alam po natin ay tama at hindi lahat ng tama ay alam natin. Exactly. Okay? Kaya nga sabi natin, active listening is not only listening by your ears, but also listening with the heart and mind, with an open heart and an open mind. Kasi there are instances in which our ideas may not be validated or may not be uh, true, pero yung mga idea ng audiences natin ay tama. We have to recognize those things. Okay? Nakuha po? Now, as also an effective listener, you have to try to get the context of the facts that of what is being said. Kasi minsan, there are ideas which are off or there are ideas which are invalid. Ngayon, as a listener, how would you deal with that kind of instance or with that kind of idea? As a listener and as a facilitator, kapag may nagbahagi ng idea na sala o hindi tama o taliwas, anong gagawin mo? Paparahin mo ba siya habang siya nagsasalita? Papatigilin mo ba siya? The answer is no. It's a big no. Kasi you are discrediting agad what the sharer is sharing. To give an effective facilitation skill, you have to respect, tama, Miss Nice. You have to respect the idea and the person telling the idea. And afterwards, you have to try to clarify the idea before correcting it. Kasi minsan, maganda ang idea, hindi maganda ang pagkasabi. May punto, hindi maayos ang pagkainik or pagkasalita. So you have to clarify first. At kapag naliwanag mo na at sa tingin mo may sala or may kulang pa, then saka mo itatama in a nice way. You don't have to do it sarcastically kasi you will offend the listener. You get my point? Yung kasi kadalasan ng problema, although our purpose is to correct or to refine the idea shared by the listener or the audience, ang nangyayari natatakot silang mag-share kasi you are doing it sarcastically. So ang dapat mong gawin ay you have to tell it in a nice way. Siyempre, the next one, listen with a willingness to understand. Kasi minsan, may mga taong nagtatanong lang, not because may nagtatanong at nagbabahagi, not because they want to share idea, but they want to test the knowledge of the speaker. Pero kapag ka ganun, you have to have the willingness to listen. Okay? Kasi if you are not willing to listen, then definitely the ideas will not sink in. Yung tipong nagtatanong ka pero may alam ka namang iyo. Wag ganon. Yung tipong you are asking something at sa utak may naiisip ka na, so hindi ka magiging open sa sinasabi. And the next one is you have to set aside distractions. If you are listening and there are crowds which are noisy, there are somehow unavoidable distractions, palipasin mo na yung distraction. Kasi makaka-distract iyon sa message na i-deliver sa iyo. You also have to set aside one's own thoughts and feelings when listening. Kasi minsan, yun na nga yung sinasabi ko, yung openness, we are not open to listen or we are not open to hear the insights or words of other people because we have our own thoughts. Diba? Ay sabi nga ni Sir Gerald, hindi lahat ng alam natin ay tama at hindi lahat ng tama ay alam natin. So we have to set aside our own thoughts and feelings when listening. Kaya lagi kong tatandaan, paano nakikinig? Tatlo ang papaganahin. Tainga, puso, at utak. Okay? You get that point? Right. Now, kung effective listener ka na, anong sunod? If you are an effective listener, what's the next skill? Ayan, sabi ni Miss Manilyn, matutong makinig at i-clarify ang suggestion ng mga listener. Kasi minsan, hindi natin, narinig natin, and then hindi natin kinlarify, ikinorek agad natin. Baka kasi nga, it needs clarification. Kaya bago, kapag ka ganito, mga ma'am and sir, and if you are teaching na, wag i-correct agad ang bata, ika-clarify muna yung idea ng bata. Anong ibig sabihin, anong point, and then after clarification, at kapag naunawa mo na ang kanyang sinabi, at may sala or may dapat i-enhance, saka mo i-refine. Kasi maaring yung delivery ang problema, maaring yung organization of thoughts, pero tama naman ang point. Sabi ni Miss Mary Grace, the next one is practice. Kasi if we are listening, kasi bilang isang facilitator, dapat lahat ng senses natin gumagana. Yung sense of seeing natin, dapat gumagana, yung sense of hearing, yung ating lahat. ng senses bilang tao. Kung tayo'y nakikinig, dapat matuto din tayong mag-observe. Kasi hindi lahat ng audience ay may courage to speak up. Hindi lahat ng estudyante ay handang magsabi ng kaniyang idea. So we have to have observation skills. Okay? As an effective facilitator, you have to observe. As an effective teacher, you have to observe. Kasi merong mga batang takot na sabihin o i-voice out ang kanyang idea because of the fear of being corrected or the fear of being the fear of failure. So dapat ma-anticipate natin yung ganong klase ng instances. Kasi minsan, kapag pinabayaan natin ng isang bata na ganon na lamang ang nararamdaman, mag-a-accumulate yun at hindi maganda ang magiging resulta. Diba? Anuman ang kinikimkim natin kapag dumami ng dumami, sumasabog, umaapaw. Kaya bilang guro, hindi ka lang dapat nakikinig. Dapat nag-o-observe ka din. Dapat yun, nasa paligid mo, tinitingnan mo. Kapag halimbawa, sayang-saya ang klase, ang nakangiti ang mga bata, may ilang batang hindi natutuwa or may mga ilang batang hindi nakangiti, you have to be mindful of them. Kasi somehow, baka the things that you are talking may be offensive for them or there are cases na halimbawa ay makakaapekto sa kanila. So you have to anticipate and recognize those instances. Now, what this it takes to have an effective observation skills? As much as possible, you have to note the level of involvement in the activities. Titingnan mo ang level of involvement ng iyong mga estudyante. Given the fact that you are facing 50 halimbawa or 45 students, you have to recognize each participation. Paano sila nagre-respond sa ibinibigay mo? And syempre, you have to monitor the energy level of the trainees during the session or of the learners during the class. Kasi minsan, sa una lang magaling, pagdating sa pahuli, nababawasan na yung kanilang level of involvement. As a facilitator, you have to sustain them. Hindi pwedeng sa una lang masaya, pahuli, dumidecline na yung energy. It's not like that. Dapat lagi mong ma-ensure na sustain yung level of involvement, sustain yung kanilang level of energy during the session. And how can we ensure that? Una, we could provide stimulating activities, we could provide health break, or we could provide somehow questions to facilitate understanding, at i-check kung nakikinig pa ba o tulog na. Ano? Okay. Next, you have to watch the participants' behavior, clues as to how they are receiving the workshop session. Kasi there are instances na kapag may sinabi ka, ang bata parang nakunot ang noo, ang audience ay parang umiiling-iling, you have to be mindful of that. Kasi maaaring there are instances na hindi nila nauunawaan ang iyong sinasabi or may problema sa iyong sinabi. So you have to consider that. You also have to read the situation correctly, considering all the factors affecting it. Kung sa tingin mo, medyo biglang umingay, tapos hindi na magkarinigan, kita mo yun sa facial expression ng iyong mga tagapakinig. Kaya dapat, bilang facilitator, you have to be an observer. Ano? You have to be sensitive with the feelings, with the thoughts, and with the acts and behavior of your audiences. Okay? Now, before I proceed with the next skill, my question is, do you think it is really essential for us to be an observant as a teacher or as a facilitator? Sa tingin niyo po, is it really essential na kailangan observer din tayo? Sir, nakikinig naman kami. Bakit kailangan maging observer pa? Do you think it's essential?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
dear. Why? Okay, let's ask Ma'am Daisy Del Rosario. Miss Daisy, why do you think it's really essential din na dapat ikaw ay effective observer?
Yes, sir. Kasi kailangan nating maging observant o observer sa mga learner natin. Kasi para malaman natin kung sila ba ay nakikinig ba o nakakaintindi o nakakasabay ba sa topic na 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 inaano natin sa kanila.
All
Yes, sir.
right, precisely. Aside from that, thank you, Miss Daisy. Sabi ni Vernie Tuason, yes, lalo na po kapag yung body movement nila, pwedeng sinasabi nila na nakikinig sila, pero yung way ng pag-upo or hikab-hikab could be a factor also. Yung tipong akala mo'y nakikinig yung there are instances kasi there are jokes, tito jokes na physically present but mentally absent. You have to also consider that. Sabi ni Michael, observing is everything. Humans learn and do by sight. It's their main sense of everything. Uh, if you want to learn about anything, you have to observe it. At kung titingnan natin, if we go back to the development of human beings, yung pre-operational and operational stages ng tao, ang batay natututo sa pag-observe, 'di ba? And that's also one of the principles of symbolic interaction. We learn by observing things, right? And syempre, dahil hindi ibig sabihin na ikaw ay facilitator, ikaw lang ang nag impart ng knowledge. Maaring matuto ka by means of observing your audiences. Sabi ni Amy, in a way of communication of each other, at least we are sensitive to the words and actions. No. So tatlo kasi ang dapat nating pag-obserbahan. Una, yung kanilang behavior, pangalawa yung kanilang action, and pangatlo yung pagtanggap nila ng ating sinasabi. Alright? And syempre, by means of observing, sabi ni Hiren, you know the learner's strengths and weaknesses. So I hope it's clear. I hope maliwanag po. So dalawa na ang dapat nating taglayin bilang isang teacher facilitator. We have to be a good listener. We also have to be a good observer. Ay ngayon, dahil nga nagpa-facilitate ka ng discussion, anong una mong ginagawa para ma-facilitate ang discussion? Anyone? What's the first thing you are doing? Darren's. Para ma-facilitate ang discussion. Di ba ganun din kapag halimbawa
Sir,
tayo
ano po,
nakikipagkala or naliligaw?
pwede pong sumagot, sir.
Yes, Irene.
Ano po, sir, guess ko po, asking questions, sir, para po
Very
magkaroon po ng
good.
discussion.
All right, very good. We ask questions to stimulate discussion. And that's the third skill that a facilitator should learn. Ang tawag natin dyan ay questioning skills. Very good. Thank you, Miss Irene. Okay? So, elicit key understanding of the concepts or input presented is called as the questioning skill. No, hindi lang dapat marunong kang makinig, hindi lang dapat marunong kang mag-observe. Dapat marunong ka ding magtanong. As a facilitator, you have to learn how to ask the right questions. Okay? Pero, paano ba natin masasabi that we are effective in doing so or we have effective questioning skill? Una, you have to ask questions that are clear and focused. Kasi ganito yan. If you want a clear and precise answer, have a clear and precise question. So it boils down with proper questioning. Kasi there are instances that the question is too hard to answer because the question is wrong or the way you orchestrate the question is problematic. Okay? Kaya kung gusto mong maging maganda ang sagot ng iyong audience or ng iyong learners, dapat maganda ang iyong tanong. Kung gusto mong maliwanag ang sagot, maliwanag ang tanong. Okay? And syempre, ang pagtatanong ay hindi natatapos lang sa pagtatanong. Kaya ka nagtatanong kasi gusto mong may sumagot. At pag may sumagot, the next thing is you have to respond to trainees' responses appropriately. Give them credit. Praise them, recognize them. Why? Kasi it further stimulate or boost their confidence to answer again. Kasi ang tendency kapag nagtanong ka and you don't give credit to the response of your attendees or your students, chances are they will not be answering again kasi they feel that their answer were not credited or their answers were not recognized. Okay? So you have to respond to them appropriately. At kapag ikaw ay nagtatanong, you also have to utilize your questionings, your listening skills. The next one is you always have to ask higher order thinking skill question. Kasi kapag nagtanong ka ng question that can be asked, that can be answered by yes or no, it ends the discussion. Kaya nga nagtatanong tayo to stimulate and facilitate knowledge creation and discussion. Kung ang tanong mo sino ang pumatay kay Magellan, tapos na agad. 'Di ba? Tapos na agad ang iyong tanong. Kasi kapag nakasagot, wala nang pwedeng i-follow up. It's better to ask hanging questions. Yung hanging question that stimulates curiosity, stimulates further discussion, and stimulates further questions pa. Okay? Kaya tinatawag nating higher order thinking skills. And how can we say that our question is higher order thinking? If it requires students to analyze, synthesize, evaluate, criticize, or even justify the answer, then definitely that's higher order thinking. You get my point po? And syempre, solicit, accept, and act on feedback from trainees. Kasi minsan, kapag nagtanong tayo at may isang sumagot, tinatapos na natin. Pansin nyo ba? Pag ako'y nagtanong, ilan ang akong pinapasagot? Madami, right? 'Di ba? Simula kanina hanggang ngayon. 'Di ba? Kapag ako'y nagtatanong, ilan ang aking pinapasagot? 3, 4, 5, madami. Why? Because I'm soliciting many responses as possible. Bakit? Kasi it enriches the concept I am presenting. Diba? At kapag kayo po ay nagtatanong, do not be satisfied with the single answer, with one answer. Diba? Sakala, masasatisfy lang dapat tayo sa isa kapag asawa natin or kapag girlfriend or boyfriend natin, masatisfy at maging sakto tayo sa isa. Pero kapag tayo nagtatanong, do not be satisfied with one answer. Ask for other opinion. Ganun naman sa tunay na buhay. 'Di ba? Kapag tayo nagpa-doktor, we ask for second opinion. Kapag tayo bibili ng sasakyan, we ask for other things. 'Di ba? We inquire to other things. Ganun din sa pagtuturo. Do not be satisfied with a single answer. For as long as it's substantial to your discussion, magtanong ka pa ng magtanong. Baka mas marami ka pang matututunan at maririnig mula sa iyong audience. Okay? The next one is process responses with probing question to elicit the desire for learning. So as much as possible, if your students have shared something, provide follow-up question, and from that follow-up question, provide follow-up discussion, and then if possible, provide another follow-up question. Ang tawag diyan ay Socratic dialectic. If you are familiar with Socrates, siya yung nagsabi ng tinatawag natin na Socratic dialectic. Pag sinabi natin Socratic dialectic or Socratic method of asking question, from a big question, magkakaroon ng maraming follow-up questions. Nakuha po?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. I hope I'm still making sense. All right. Now, the next one is that a facilitator should also phrases questions so they can elicit responses. There are instances kasi po, mga ma'am and sir, that the question is too big for the students to grasp it at once. So, ang ating gagawin, para mas maunawaan nila yung tanong, i-phrase natin or mutamutakiin natin, hiwa-hiwalayin, or yung malaking tanong kung sa tingin natin nangangailangan ng malaking sagot ay di ating paghiwa-hiwalayin at saka natin buuin sa ending. Nakuha po? Next, acknowledges trainees' contributions or efforts. Give them praise. If the answer is good, wag maging madamot sa very good. Kung ang answer ay commendable, wag maging madamot sa pag-praise kasi libre naman yon. Libre ang pagpuri sa kapwa. Libre ang pagbibigay ng importansya sa kapwa at wala yung bayad. Kaya, wag maging madamot, i-acknowledge ang response na iyong bata. Kahit yan ay yes lang, give them praise. Kasi yung pagsabi ng yes, it takes so many courage para masabi mo yung yes. 'Di ba? At para din nga ma-encourage, sabi ni Miss Celeste. 'Di ba? Kasi minsan mga tao, may mga bata o estudyante na yung pagsabi lamang ng no, pagsabi ng yes, ay hirap na hirap sila. At kapag kahit yan ay yes, yan ay kahit ay no, kahit yan ay pagnadlang, pagtango, recognize them. And syempre, ask questions to clarify doubts. Okay? Kasi minsan, we are not only asking questions for us to determine whether the students are learning, but we are also asking questions for us to what? Clarify doubts or vague concepts. No. So tatlo na ang skills na nating natalakay, mga ma'am and sir, when it comes to effective facilitation. Right? And what are those? Una, listening. Pangalawa, observing. Pangatlo, questioning. O ngayon, anong sunod? Marunong ka nang makinig, marunong kang mag-observe, marunong kang magtanong. Ay ano naman ang sunod? Halimbawa, may pangangailangan ang iyong estudyante, ang iyong audience. Kailangan bang taglayin mo din yung skill na pag-accommodate sa kanilang needs? Sa tingin ninyo, yes or yes? Kailangan ba yon? Definitely. Kaya meron tayong tinatawag na attending skills. As a facilitator, you have to have this so-called attending skills. At yan yung pang-apat. Diba? Ang una, listening, observing, questioning. The fourth one is attending skill. You have to manage the learning atmosphere throughout the session. And syempre, you have to make the audience feel comfortable throughout the session. Kasi minsan, kaya hindi effective ang nagiging session or hindi effective ang learning is that the students are not comfortable with the speaker or not comfortable with the teacher. Kaya dapat we have to make our students comfortable para nang sa gayon, mas maengganyo silang matuto at makinig. Ay paano natin may ensure na ang mga bata ay komportable during our session? Ang ating mga estudyante ay komportable sa atin. Ay di you have to attend with their needs. You have to be able to recognize their needs and give them what is due or provide them the best possible remedy you could provide to attend their needs. Ay ano ba yung tinatawag nating attending skills? So an attending facilitator exhibits the following behavior. Una, you have to be a welcoming person. Baka naman yung unang bukas mo pa lamang ng camera ay mukha ka na agad na pagsakloban ng langit at lupa. O baka naman pagpasok mo sa classroom ay para ka na agad tigring mangangagat o dragon na magbubuga ng apoy. Abay, hindi ganon. Ano, dapat pagpasok may maaliwalas ang iyong mukha. You radiate positive vibes. You radiate energy na positive. Kasi kapag ka ganon, ang mangyayari, hindi mo makukondisyon ng ayos ang iyong mga estudyante. Kasi the emotion that you are portraying may be absorbed by your learners. Diba? Ay kung pagpasok mo ikinakasimangot, ay di ang mga bata ay hindi magiging masaya. Pero kapag pasok mo agad ay ang iyong smile agad ay abot hanggang tenga, aba, at maaliwalas ang iyong pagmumukha at hindi mukha kang bagong gising, aba, I mind you, may encourage din makinig ang mga bata. Kasi in facilitating, you are not only presenting the content, but you are also presenting yourselves. At kapag ipinresent mo ang iyong self dully, then definitely, masama ang kalalabasan. Ano, kaya kung ikaw ay haharap sa crowd, at least make sure that you are well presentable. Charming ka, approachable. Ano, yun, sabi ni Zenia, sometimes po kasi boring ang teacher, napakaseryoso, tapos sa class, just reading the slides with no other words uttered. So, we cannot blame those kind of teacher. Maybe that's their strategy. But you are here to learn the facilitation skills. So, definitely, you are here to absorb what I'm saying and at some point could be applied in your future career. Kasi itong facilitation, hindi lang ito sa pagtuturo magagamit. Right? 'Di ba? Hindi sa pagtuturo, kundi sa inyong pang-araw-araw na buhay. Halimbawa, you are facing the crowd, ikaw ay team leader, ikaw ay supervisor, you can also use this. Sabi ni Ma'am Remeline, good looking. It doesn't necessarily mean that if you are good looking, you are handsome, you are gorgeous, but you are well presented or presentable. And how can we say that you are good looking? Kasi yung beauty, yung itsura is subjective. Ang kailangan mo gawin ay confident sa iyong sarili. Kasi kapag confident ka sa sarili mo, nagmumukha kang pogi at maganda kahit sakto lang, 'di ba? Get my point? Okay. Next, make certain that the trainees are the main focus. Okay? Lagi mong ipaparamdam sa iyong estudyante, sa iyong attendees, or sa iyong audience that they are the focus. Ano? Do not be so centered na ikaw bida, hindi ka naman si Jollibee. Right? Ikaw ay facilitator. Ikaw ay teacher. So make them feel that they are the center of your discussion. Make them feel that they are the center of the learning process. That's why we have to ensure that it is student-centered or learner-centered. And then you have to encourage trainees or participants or audience to participate. Kahit pa yung tinatamad, gawin mong magana. Hayaan mo at iyong sanayin na sila ay nagpa-participate. And then, respect each person. Kasi ito minsan ang nagiging problema natin. We want to be respected, yet we don't know how to respect our students. Kung gusto mong respeto ka ng iyong estudyante, you have to respect them. Respect is meant to be earned. It is not innate. Okay? So kaya kung gusto mong irespeto ka, mahalin ka ng bata, ibigay mo yun sa kanila kasi you cannot ask what you do not give to them. Hindi mo pwedeng sabihin na gusto mong mahalin ka ng bata pero hindi mo naman sila minamahal. Okay? Very good, Miss Irene. Apply the golden rule. Do not do unto others what you do not want them do unto you, or baligtarin natin.
Diyan.
Gawin mo. Okay? May I request everyone to please mute your microphone if kindly check kung nakamute po ang microphone. Ayan, thank you. Alright, so, kaya sabi natin, baliktarin natin. Gawin mo sa mga tao yung gusto mong gawin nila sa iyo. Kung gusto mong itrato kanila, may paggalang, galangin mo din sila. Hindi ibig sabihin na ikaw ang guro ay hindi ka na marunong respeto sa iyong estudyante. Ang estudyante ay may nararamdaman, ang estudyante ay may feeling. So, dapat nire-respeto mo din sila. Okay? Next, avoid distracting behavior. Bilang guro, minsan kasi we have mannerisms. Yung tipong, no, no, tapos tinatarahan niya ng bata. I know that because I have been doing that when I was in high school. Then I realized na mali pala ang ginagawa ko kasi minsan baka ako'y ganunin din ang aking mga estudyante. Kaya dapat mga ma'am and sir, we have to avoid those things. Yung ating distracting behavior, yung ating distracting languages. So we have to be mindful of that. Kasi minsan, hindi lahat ng pagkakatao'y umaayon sa atin or hindi lahat ng gusto natin ay tanggap ng bata. So we have to be mindful of that. Yung mannerism natin, ating iiwasan, ating, kung hindi ma-eliminate, ay ating i-minimize, okay? And then, you have to also position your body so that you can face all the trainees. But if the problem is the space, pwede ka namang umikot, pwede kang mag-roam, pwede kang mag-loiter para ma-monitor mo din ang iyong bata, okay? That's attending skills. Next one. You also have provide, sabi nila, dapat ikaw ay energetic, dapat ikaw ay nakasmile. Kaya you have to provide enthusiasm throughout the session, especially when on board. Kaya halimbawa, ramdam mo na ang iyong mga estudyante ay naboboard na, ramdam mo na ang iyong mga listener ay medyo, medyo inaantok na, you have to crack jokes or you have to give energizer para at least ma-break yung tension at sila ay maging motivated ulit. Then, you also have to give participants full attention during the session. Wag yung parang ikaw ang speaker pero lutang ka. Yung tipong nagsasalita ka pero parang lutang ka, parang sabaw ka. You have to have full attention to your audiences. You also have to acknowledge greetings, responses of the participant. Kapag halimbawa meron kasi mga audiences na kapag nagsagot or nag-share, nag-good morning muna, ay di mag-good morning ka din. Oh, I'm sorry. Reminder to everyone, please avoid clicking any other para hindi tayo ma-distract. Doon po sa nakashare ng screen, kindly stop sharing po para at least ma-emphasize po yung ating, yeah, thank you very much. Okay. So, next thing. Use natural facial expressions when talking to learners. No, kung ikaw ay masaya, tumawa ka. May mga masaya, ipakita mong masaya ka. Use your natural facial expression. Why? Because your facial expression is an effective communication tool. Okay? Pero, ganare. Hindi ibig sabihin na masama ang sinabi ng iyong estudyante ay sisimangot ka. Abay, ma-offend mo ang iyong audience. So, our emotion, our facial expression speaks a lot. So, be mindful. Okay? Next. Next po, ilan na ang ating skill? 4. Okay? We have the listening, we also have the observing, we have the questioning, we have the attending. Ano po ang panlima? The fifth skill that we have to acquire is processing skill. But before I go on with the discussion, I'm asking a 5-minute CR break. Okay lang ba yon? Yan, sige. Pwede po tayo magkaroon ng, ako lamang po ay, I'm requesting a 5-minute CR break and then I'll be back again. Ano? So kung tayo po ay magsi-CR break din, walang problema. Iinom ng tubig, walang problema. Okay? Excuse me for a while. All right, and I'm back. Okay, handa na pong makinig uli? Paki-comment nga po. Kung kanina ay puso, hanapin niyo naman ngayon ang star sa inyong keyboard. Hanapin ang star. I-comment ang star kung handa ng makinig. Ayan ko, ang daming stars. Ako hahanap din ako ng star. Siyempre, dapat meron din akong star. Wait. Ay, wala akong makita. Wait. Yan, thank you po. Star, yan sabi ni Sister, star. Hindi ako papahuli, syempre. Mag-i-star din ako. Ayan. Okay. Ayan. It's good that you are all ready to listen. Now, the next one is processing skills. Yeah. What do we mean by processing? Dapat daw bilang isang facilitator at isang guro, dapat we know how to evaluate the session. Alam natin kung alin ang naging maayos at alin ang hindi. Kasi as a facilitator, we have to process the session. Okay? Kasi hindi lahat ng session ay maganda ang kinakalabasan. At hindi lahat ng session ay okay ang result. And if we want to ensure that, we have to have the processing skill para there is a sort of evaluation on our session. How can we say that we are good in doing processing skill? Dapat tayo ay We are leading in analyzing trainees, outputs, ideas, resulting into deeper learning. If there are outputs, there are ideas, we have to process them. And how can we say that we are processing them? By providing insights, by providing comments and suggestions. Okay. Also included in the processing skill is highlighting activities that lead to new learning and proper attitude. So as teachers, you have to also recognize the activities that are essential and the activities that allow students to learn proper attitude or new skill. You also have to encourage divergent thinking for clearer perspective. Okay? The next one, you have to lead in organizing thoughts, ideas, and feelings for easier integration. So it does not necessarily mean that you observe, you listen, you are not doing processing. You have to process them clearly.
Po.
All right, nawala daw ang slides. But it's okay naman on my screen. Siguro, baka po signal. Let me check. Everyone, kindly, nakikita po ba ang slides?
No, sir.
No, sir,
Hindi
Richie,
po,
on
sir.
your
Hindi po
end.
nakashare.
Maliit lang po siya,
Sir.
sir. Maybe
Meron po
after
slide.
kanina nung may nag-show screen, sir.
Okay, so for a moment, I'll just fix it. Okay.
Okay na po, sir. Thank you.
Ayan. Wait,
Maliit lang siya, sir.
aking slideshow. Ayan, lumaki po ba?
Ayan, okay na po.
Yes po, sir. Okay po. Thank you.
Ayan. Ayop pa sa lakas niya sa akin. Okay. All right. Now, shall we proceed? That's the processing skill. So, ilang skill na? Aba, napakadami palang skill na dapat kong taglayin. But actually, ginagawa naman natin yan bilang facilitator. Yun nga lamang, hindi natin nare-realize na yun pala yung skill ko na, yun pala yung strength ko na. So, how many na ang meron tayo? We have the first one, listening, right? The second one, observing. The third one, questioning. The fourth one, attending. Ang panglima, processing. Ay ano po ang pang-anim? Sa pagkakadami naman niyan. Ano po ang pang-anim? Ang pang-anim ay ito. Summarizes the participants' learning at the end of the workshop or session. And that is integrating skills. Na bilang ikaw ay facilitator, dapat marunong kang mag-integrate. Dahil nga marunong kang mag-process ng iyong session, marunong ka ding mag-integrate. And how do we acquire this effective integration skills? Una, you have to see to it that you were able to identify the relationship between activities. Okay? So yung activity 1, 2, 3, 4 hanggang dulo, dapat they are connected with each other. You see the connection of those activities. At kung kita mo na yung na may connection doon, dapat kita rin yun ng mga bata. Or kung ikaw lang ang nakakakita, dapat maliwanag mo iyon or ma-explain mo sa mga audience mo. Okay? And then you have to recognize the significant learning outputs. So kung sinabi mo that you will be evaluating their output or their performance, at the end you have to evaluate it and then you have to give the rating. You have to give the evaluation of the performances. Otherwise, ang sasabihin sa iyo ng mga bata ay si sir naman ay nagpapagawa pero hindi naman nire-recognize. Kapag kagano'n, nasisira yung confidence nila sa iyo. Alright? And then, also, if you are integrating, it does not only be done at the end of the session, it must also be throughout. Kasi minsan, there are convergence or differing ideas, magkakaibang ideas. At kung magkakaiba bilang guro or bilang facilitator, that nagmi-meet dun sa gitna. At kapag nagmi-meet dun sa gitna, ipaprocess mo para at least you come up with a more or a precise idea. then you also have to build new learning on prior experiences. Ito yung tinatawag nating scaffolded learning. That's why we have the so-called review of the lesson. Yung naunang klase or naunang naituro mo, dapat ma-relate mo sa susunod or sa iyong itinuturo ngayon nang sa gayon ma-ensure natin yung fluidity and continuity of the concepts you are teaching. Okay? Siyempre, the next one, elicit solution to arguments or clash of ideas. Okay? Hindi natin maiiwasan na may clash. May dalawang idea ang nagbabanggaan. And as a facilitator, it is your duty to guarantee that those clash of ideas or arguments will resolve before the session ends. Okay? And syempre, you have to identify new directions. Do not end the session without telling the importance of the session and telling its implication or practical application to another things. Okay? Next, you also have to conduct management of concerns and learning sessions to check trainees' reactions from the previous day of your session. Kaya dapat nagre-review tayo. Say, for example, we have this session today. Tomorrow, we'll be having the session again. Kapag nag-session ka sa kinabukasan, dapat maliwanag mo muna. How do you feel about the session last time? What have you learned? What are seemingly vague? Something like that. And then that's it. May tanong po o ilan. So as a trainer, mga ma'am and sir, ito po ang dapat nating taglayin. You have to listen, you have to observe, you have to ask question, you have to attend their needs, you have to process the session, and syempre, you know how to integrate. Maliwanag po. So basically, that's the second objective, if I am not mistaken, of our session. We're able to identify the qualities of an effective trainer or of an effective facilitator. Do I make sense so far?
Yes, sir.
All
Yes,
right,
sir.
thank you. Can we now
Yes, sir.
okay, thank you. Can we now head on to the next topic? Punta tayo sa the do's and don'ts. Ano ang mga dapat at hindi mo dapat gawin bilang facilitator? Yes, sabi ni Senya. Yes na yes. Thank you, Senya. Alright. So, bilang facilitator, ano ang dapat at hindi dapat mong gawin? Okay. So, let's talk about the do's and don'ts. So, talking about the principles of facilitation, ano ba ang meron sila at ano ang dapat at hindi dapat natin gawin? Principle 1. What's the first principle? Direct your instruction at more than one sense at a time. Ulit po, you have to direct your instruction at more than one sense at a time. So you have to incorporate several senses. You repeat po, paalala, para po hindi tayo makadisturb sa ibang nakikinig. Kung wala po tayong sasabihin, we may mute our microphone. Okay. All right, thank you very much. So kasi sabi natin, to make learning effective, sabi niyang ni Dale's cone of learning experiences. If you are familiar with Edgar Dale, meron siyang ipinropose na tinatawag nating cone of learning experiences. At yung cone na yon, sabi doon, kapag madaming senses ang in-incorporate natin, mas natututo ang mga estudyante. So definitely, at more than one sense at a time, we have to have clarity of direction. Minsan kasi, sabi nga tama si Richie, that we have to have clarity. Kasi minsan, kaya hindi maganda or hindi tama or hindi accurate yung nahihingi nating output or response ng mga estudyante or ng mga participants is that we don't have a clear direction. So dapat there is clarity as well. At dapat itinatanong din natin sa ating mga students kung alin ang malabo at alin ang malinaw, alin ang gustong liwanagin. Okay? Now, we move on to the principle 2. The second principle is limit the amount of information you provide to the participants. You have to focus on the critical content to facilitate the information. Less is more. Less is better. You don't have to bombard your students or your audiences with so many information. Okay? Okay lang nakakaunti, mahalaga yung nauunawaan. At the end of the day, hindi yun sa dami ng naituro, kundi sa dami ng naipatuto. Okay? Next. Number 3, the third one, you have to create messages that capture participants' attention and are relevant to their needs. Use examples and analogies that relate to the participants' previous experiences. And this is what we call personalization and contextualization. As a teacher, you have to always make your learning contextualized and personalized. Ilapit natin ng sobrang lapit sa karanasan at background ng ating mag-aaral yung ating itinuturo. Okay? Next. Principle 4. What's the fourth principle? Organize information you present into meaningful bits. You may use metaphors, graphs, tables, and images to encourage this process. And as a teacher, ganito po, ating tatandaan, gawin nating example ang bata. Diba, kapag tinuturuan natin kumain ng solid food ang bata, unti-unti ang ating pagbibigay. Para hindi siya maluugan or para hindi siya mag-choke. Ganun din ang pagtuturo, ang pagpa-facilitate. Putik, bits by bits. And then sa dulo, we have generalization. No, kasi kapag dinamihan mo agad ang concept ng ibibigay mo sa mga estudyante, the tendency is that they will be overwhelmed with information. Utay-utay. Sabi ni Miss Irene, gradual. Okay? Principle 5. What's Principle 5? Pag sinabi nating Principle 5, provide plenty of opportunities for your participants to participate to practice using new information. So, ibig sabihin, hindi ka dapat tuloy-tuloy. You have to pause and then allow your students to utilize the skill that you have developed. Halimbawa, ang skill mong una ay tinuro mo sa mga bata ang paggamit ng proper punctuation. And if so, you have to provide opportunities for them to utilize that skill. There should be an application. There should be an activities that will allow your students to really exhibit the manifestation of the skill you have provided or you have delivered. And the last principle, mga ma'am and sir, would be this. Ano po yung last principle? You have to assess the knowledge, ability, and motivation of your audience. So as much as possible, you have to provide stimulating activities, and then you have to show them the relevance of the information you are sharing, and then explain its benefit. Okay? Lagi nating i-establish yung ganong bagay. Okay? So those are the principles uh, of facilitation. Okay? The next one, kung sabi natin you have to provide motivation. What's the principle 7? Never be a poor facilitator. Kaya nga, pinag-usapan natin yung mga, Kaya nga pinag-usapan natin yung mga skill ng effective facilitator ay para malaman natin na dapat hindi lamang tayo poor, dapat tayo ay effective. No? So dapat mga ma'am and sir, sundin natin yung pinakamahalagang principle, which is principle number 7. Never be a poor facilitator. And how can we ensure that? Follow the principles, the qualities that I have said, and I have shared. Okay? Do not be, although we like Nike, we like its product, pero as a facilitator, don't just do it. Wag basta na lang. Wag basta mag-facilitate na lang. Do it with quality. Do it with motivation. And do it with eagerness. Nakuha po? Nakuha
Yes.
po? All right. So thank you very much. That would be our first session. Late, magbe-break po tayo ng ilang minuto. Babalik po tayo ng alas 10. At pagbalik po natin ng 10 a.m., we'll be heading on to our second topic. I hope you learned something from the first part of my talk. Later on, we'll be having some more exciting topics on our second part. Okay? So, pwede na po kayong mag-health break. Thank you.